Hello, I'm Anika from Made to Sew. In this video, we're going to be talking about stay stitching. We're going to be looking at what stay stitching is, how to do stay stitching, and where you should be doing it on your garment. Now, there are other methods that you can use instead of stay stitching, and I have another tutorial coming soon that will talk to you about stabilizing these areas using interfacing or perhaps a couture method. For now, we're going to be looking at stay stitching. And in your garment, the area that you're going to need to stay stitch is generally the neckline. If you forget to stay stitch this area, you may find that you have a neckline that gapes and that is baggy and doesn't sit flat against the body. The first step is, of course, to cut out your fabric and mark any details you may need, such as darts and notches. Stay stitching should be completed the moment you've removed your pattern from your fabric. You will need to check your instructions to see where you need to stay stitch on this particular occasion. The majority of patterns will ask you to stay stitch the curved areas of the garment. This will include the neck and may include the armholes. The pattern is asking you to stabilize or stay stitch these areas because the curves incorporate the bias of the fabric, the 45-degree angle of the fabric that has more stretch and more give than the straight of grain and your horizontal grain. Areas such as the neckline are prone to distortion and stretching. So you want to make sure that you stay stitch this area or use another form of stabilization prior to doing anything else. The more you handle your garment, the more problems you may have. It's worthwhile checking your pattern to see if you need to stay stitch any other areas. Patterns may ask for stay stitching on areas such as princess seams, like you see here, or later on in the construction, the waist seam. Stay stitching can also be referred to as a reinforcement stitch. A reinforcement stitch is often used on an angled area, or potentially a V shape, where you're going to need to cut in very close to the final stitching line. Before we head to the sewing machine, check your pattern instructions to see if you need to complete your stay stitch in a certain direction. Necklines should be completed by sewing the stay stitch in two parts. From one shoulder, we will sew into the center of the neckline, and then again from the second shoulder, sewing to the center of the neckline. As you're feeding your fabric through the sewing machine, you potentially could still be stretching it or distorting it slightly. By completing the stay stitch in two parts, you're pushing the fabric into the middle if any stretching or distortion takes place. The alternative option would be to sew from the center out to the shoulder, and this may potentially stretch your neckline, making it wider and or longer. At the sewing machine, we're going to be completing a straight stitch, and we're going to be using a small straight stitch. So I'm going to change the length on the straight stitch to 1.5 millimeters. The stay stitching needs to be completed as close to the finished stitching line as possible, but not on it, because stay stitching is not removed when the garment is finished. I recommend 1/8 of an inch or 3 millimeters away from the finished stitching line. For this example, my seam allowance is 1 centimeter or 3/8 of an inch. I'm going to be using the edge of my foot to be able to sew just inside this. I start and end my stay stitching with a back stitch, a couple of stitches forwards, a couple of stitches backwards to secure it. Do remember that you may need to complete your stay stitching in a certain direction. For this neckline, I'm sewing from one shoulder into the center and then completing the same on the other side, the shoulder into the center. You're welcome to mark the center of the neckline if you would find this easier. Once you've completed your stay stitch, you're going to want to trim any of your threads, and then you can continue the construction of your garment. I recommend that you complete your stay stitching prior to doing anything else with your garment. There are alternative methods to the stay stitch, some of which I prefer. One method is to use fusible interfacing. Another method is more of a couture method, and instead of using fusible interfacing, uses fabric. The fabric can either be hand sewn or machine sewn onto the areas that need stabilization. And fabric choice is usually silk organza or calico or muslin. I'll share the method that I use 90% of the time in my next video. That's using interfacing to stabilize the neckline. Don't forget to subscribe for more sewing tips.